Hi guys, and welcome to this video for Year 12 Business Management. We are on Unit 3, Outcome 3, which is all about operations management. This video is going to focus on our second key knowledge point, which is all about the elements of this operation system. And we're going to focus on the inputs, processes, and outputs. If we look at the specific wording from our study design, it is exactly that. You will see that the word elements is listed. That's very important because if you see that word elements, you know that we're talking about this key knowledge point. And hopefully from our previous video, you've recognized that operations management is all about how business turns inputs into outputs using processes. So hopefully by this video, we are going to really understand inputs, processes, and outputs. Can we define them, understand their characteristics, some examples? That is the goal of this video. So if we take a step back before we delve into each one specifically, as we mentioned, operation systems is all about a business turning inputs into outputs, which are their goods and services that they're going to sell, by using processes, because of course they do something. They transform these inputs into outputs using some type of process to ultimately create the good or service that they are selling, they are marketing. We need to understand these three. We need to hopefully we already understand that this is a complicated process, but ultimately really, really important for a business and achieving their objectives. And before we move on, this word elements is really important. Anytime you see the word elements in a question, you know that you must talk about your inputs, outputs, or processes. And I'm going to call that the IPO. The IPO is ultimately the whole process of operations, and that's what we need to be talking about. So let's now delve into each of these with a bit more detail. What do we mean by an input? Throughout the rest of this video, I am going to use the example of a chocolate factory throughout. Because I think we all understand what a chocolate is as a product, and we might even understand how chocolate is made. When we talk about the inputs, we are talking about all of the resources that are used to produce this good or service. I want us to move away from thinking that it is just the ingredients or the raw materials. So in chocolate, the milk, the cocoa, examples. Inputs can be much more than that and is much more than that. There is lots of inputs that a business needs to be able to produce their product. Yes, inputs can include things like the raw materials, which is the components or supplies used in the transformation process. And in this case of chocolate, it would be the cocoa beans, the milk, for example. But they also need capital equipment, which is the plant, equipment, machinery, and the property to actually do this process, to start the process. They need labor, so they need the people to do this. We won't create chocolate without people. We need the information, so the knowledge relevant to make the chocolate, the knowledge relevant to the business operations. Time and money as well. Now, a business will not be able to start the processes of using these inputs to create outputs until all of these inputs are at the right place at the right time. So inputs is more than just the raw materials. We then move into processes, and I want us to think of processes as any activity the business undertakes to transform these inputs into the output. So in our chocolate example, and we're going to look at Yakult in a second, it's about anything that a business does to turn the inputs into the outputs, which is the finished good or service, chocolate in our example. Now, these processes can be quite complicated, and even for a simple product that we think would be quite simple, often has lots of activities throughout to ultimately to the input into an output. For example, Yakult has 16 I believe. I could be wrong by one or two. And you might not know what Yakult is. I encourage you to have a look at it. Yakult is a little fermented yogurt drink, which is good for your health. And there is 16 processes or 15 processes that need to occur for this product to be made. Now, I'm not going to go through them because you're not going to be asked necessarily about Yakult, but I do encourage you to pause this video and start to recognize that all of these things need to occur for this product to be made. And in chocolate, for example, this will include getting all the ingredients together, mixing them to create the chocolate batter or whatever you want to call it. Then it might, whatever your product is, you will include other ingredients. It'll go into molds. There will be quality checks. There is lots of processes to create the good or service that we are thinking about. Now, when we think about really complicated products like airplanes and cars, you might recognize that there is lots of different processes. But ultimately, we still end up with our output, which is the end result of the business transformation. It is the final good or service that is delivered. And in reality, that product could be a car, it could be a computer, it could be some type of service, which is our next key knowledge point, the difference between manufacturers and service businesses. It could be maybe a farm output, so we might be creating food, or as we've used a number of times, it could be chocolate. And there we have it. Hopefully this video has been pretty simple, and we recognize that whenever we see this talk of elements in the operation systems, we must be talking about our IPO, or specifically our inputs, processes, and outputs. We need to understand the differences in their definitions and how they work together to ultimately create this output.